episode 8 of the Simply Great Relationships podcast. We're so glad you could join us today. I'm Meredith Silversmith, and this is Marina, and today's episode is a good one. It's about what is the thing that men do that leads to an 81% chance of divorce. Do you know what this thing is?
I do.
You do? Yeah, we'll tell you.
I do. I don't know if everybody else knows, but they're going to learn today.
You're going to know. So make sure you stay with us till the end because we've got a great bonus for you and we're going to let you know how to get it.
So research shows that men are more likely to resist influence from their partners, and the not accepting influence contributes to a divorce rate at 81%, which is huge.
Significant. Very significant number. And, you know, both genders do this, so it's not an all men thing. But, again, the research shows that men are more likely to do this than women. And it also applies in same-sex relationships, but at a lower rate. So we felt that it was really crucial to talk about this today because it's so strong when it happens.
And this is something that I'm sure both of us, I know I see it all the time with couples. I'm sure you see it all the time. I used to be a real guilty party of this.
Yep, same.
And, you know, just making small shifts really helped me personally, really helped me in my relationship. So accepting influence, it's a big deal, and it's not something that I think a lot of people are always able to name.
Yeah.
But we all know how it feels when it's happening to us when our partner is not accepting influence from us, and we generally also know how it feels when we're digging our heels in and not accepting influence.
Absolutely. So, you know, I think part of the way you can identify it is to share, we want to share with you, how does it feel when your partner is accepting influence from you? So you're giving a suggestion, or you're making a request, or you're, you know, giving advice, and your partner responds in a way that shows that they're accepting that influence. How do you feel?
Well, I know for me personally, when I'm making a suggestion or a request or something like that, and George is listening to it, and I can see he's really attuned and internalizing value from it, like, I feel really heard, I feel really validated, I feel really valued, I feel really important, I feel like I'm able to contribute to his life. Like, there's so much reward that I internalize from it, and that I feel like our relationship internalizes from it. It's a really good feeling.
Yeah, definitely. You feel super connected. So then, if your partner's not accepting influence from you, so if you're making a suggestion or giving advice, and your partner's responding in a way that communicates, I am not going to take any of this into account, I know that would kind of leave me feeling unimportant, not heard, not valued, like my partner doesn't take me seriously. You know, a lot of negativity comes from that. Even in a small moment, that can really hit pretty deeply.
Yeah, I mean, a word I've heard, and, you know, I hate to gender stuff, but, like, I've heard a lot of women use is, like, it made me feel stupid.
Yes, I've heard that as well.
And that is such a negative, and consequence-bearing feeling to hold in a relationship.
Yeah, that's painful. Yeah.
Again, it's taking this hierarchy and shifting it to this, you know, and good communications made from this. We touched on this in episode 1 about communication. We touched on this in episode 4 about 4 horsemen. You always want to stay partners, so not accepting influence really makes people feel a little belittled.
Yeah, and you have to consider, you know, as we talk about this today, what message do you want to send to your partner? So take yourself out of the moment, out of that topic, out of that conversation. What message do you want to send to your partner? I know I want Tom to feel important important and valued and heard and understood. Like, I want him to feel all the good feelings.
Yeah.
So that would be motivation enough for me to work on this piece if I was having trouble accepting influence.
Yeah, exactly. And I want George to feel the same. I want George to always feel like he's a priority in my life, and like whatever he brings to the table has value.
Mm-hmm.
Even if I may not agree with it, it still has value because whatever he says, does in the context of our relationship has value to me.
Yeah.
And rejecting influence is sending the complete opposite message.
Yep. Absolutely.
So what makes it hard to accept influence?
Many things make it difficult. I know for us, being an only child, again, not to categorize any only children out there, but let me put it a little more specifically. Being an only child growing up without siblings, you are not having the daily interaction with peers where you are required to give and take. You are required to negotiate. You are required to accept influence and then offer influence and have that reciprocal relationship. You just don't have it in the same capacity that someone who grows up with siblings has.
Yeah, and you're really used to accepting influence from someone in a position of power or at the top of a hierarchy. And I almost feel like that, at least for me, made me a little oppositional to accepting influence because I always, like in previous relationships and in the beginning of my relationship with George, felt like accepting influence is like giving in.
Yeah, absolutely. Or that it's not meeting, if I'm accepting influence, then I'm relinquishing something that I want or my expectation of how things should be. And that didn't feel good.
Yeah. It's a feeling of disempowerment, which none of us like to live with.
Yeah.
Especially us only children. I'd say another thing that makes it really hard is when your relationship has had an issue of accepting influence, like when there's been a lot of headbutting and a lot of putting things out and having them be rejected, you start to develop that as a pattern. You develop a history of feeling unheard, feeling unvalued, feeling dismissed, and you almost like preemptively want to reject influence. You almost preemptively want to shut your partner down because you're like, well, you never accept my influence,
right?
So I won't accept yours. Doesn't matter what it is.
Right.
Like, I want to, it's a really convoluted way of asking for empathy, right? It's saying, I want you to know what it feels like to be me, but not in a nice way that allows your partner to be empathic and to make an adjustment, but in a way that is like, I'm hurt, let me hurt you so you know what it's like. Yeah.
And what's tough about that dynamic is once you go there, right, it doesn't leave a lot of room for improvement. So one person or both of you could start trying to do it better or do it differently, but because you've got that built-in reaction, it's almost like you don't give each other the opportunity to show you that they're doing it differently.
Yeah, and I see this a lot where, partners really start to wave the white flag, start to make repair attempts, and the other one is just so used to a negative relationship pattern that it's hard for them to internalize it and to accept it. And it's very sad when that happens, and it's almost like you have to call it out and say, like, hey, this person's really trying.
Yeah.
And you are preemptively defensive here.
Yeah. That's a super important piece. I think the other thing that plays in is how we were parented, right? If you think about, as you said before, accepting influence often comes from someone in a position of authority, someone above you in some way. So if you were parented in a way where you had no influence, so I know I see a lot of clients where, I just get the feeling based on how they interact with their partner and things they say to me that I just know, and then it's validated when I ask them. Growing up, they grew up in a house where you had no influence as a child. You are to be seen and not heard. If you express a feeling that's contrary to what your parents feel, you're either punished or ignored or dismissed.
Or labeled oppositional.
It's got a very negative response, and you grow up having just these really strong limits around you that you're not allowed to assert your influence.
Mm-hmm.
So in those, in that situation, as an adult, you can either maintain that path of not asserting yourself and not asserting influence, even though it doesn't feel good to do that. Or you might go the exact opposite and say, that's it, I'm free, I'm going to assert all my influence everywhere because I never got to. So typically it goes to one extreme or the other, but that's really important to be aware of.
Mm-hmm. The other one is, expectations around the decision-making in a relationship, did you grow up in a household where dad, was the breadwinner, so that meant that dad makes all the decisions and picks all the vacations and all the restaurants, and mom's just, the caretaker and homemaker. What if you're the daughter? What does that tell you about influence and how it's, so it plays a lot into what dynamic you were exposed to and how you feel about that dynamic.
Right. So you may push against it, or you may try to carry that with you, depending on how you feel about it. So this is a big piece, right? To look back at your own history and evaluate, how did you grow up? What did you experience? And how did you feel about it? And in what way do you feel you're bringing that into your relationship today? I know something that I've seen is one partner is really passive, whether that's their natural temperament or reflective of how they grew up. They're just really passive, so they don't assert a lot of influence, and they feel okay about that, but it's still damaging, right? So even though they're not taking that step to put it out there, that doesn't mean they don't think about what they would like to see or would prefer or need, but it doesn't get verbalized. So not having that impact on their partner is still damaging. So that's something I've been working on with a couple of my couples, is to really empower a really passive person to share what's on their mind and share what they're feeling and share what they need.
How I see this a lot is when a couple comes in and it's like, well, he never has an opinion, and it's always up to me to make, and you have that one partner who bears the decision burden, being the martyr, and the passive partner is just kind of like, well, if I had a bit more of a voice and my influence was accepted a little more, maybe you wouldn't have to be the martyr as much.
Right. So that definitely, we see that a lot. We talked about the 4 horsemen, as you said, in episode 4. When someone isn't accepting influence, it typically looks like one of the 4 horsemen.
Yeah, there's no room for dialogue. There's no room for compromise. There's no room for any type of authentic communication. It's like the shutdown. Like, I always imagine it like you're squatting a fly. It's the criticism, the defensiveness, the contempt that comes in right away and is like, nope.
Yeah, squashed.
Yeah.
Oh, it's so dismissive. You just imagine that feeling, like the person that you love the most, the person that you want to feel the closest to and the most important to, and it's like a door being slammed in your face.
Yeah, and that's what I look at it as, really. And I think this is where it's important to make a distinction. Accepting influence is not always agreeing. Accepting a huge part, I'd say like the biggest part of accepting influence is giving your partner to the platform to lay out whatever they want to lay out and tell them that their opinion is valuable.
Yeah.
That's like, if you are able to do that, that's already the biggest part of it. But when you're just not giving them that platform at all, like, that is extremely rejecting and essentially saying, like, I don't care about what you have to say.
Yeah.
Not only I'm not gonna do it.
Right. But I don't care. So, let's get into some practical tips that we could use right away to make a change in this area. You know, and I think the first one that makes the most sense is you have to set the intention to be open to accepting influence, right? You have to decide, okay, I hear that accepting influence is important, and I'm going to do it. And I'm not going to be defensive if my partner offers a suggestion. I'm not going to shut the door in their face. I'm going to try to be open and listen and flexible and receptive.
Yeah, I think that's huge. Just going in with that mindset of me accepting influences, I'm not going to get defeated is huge. To follow up with that, I mean, how you do that is episode 1. Use those communication strategies to make sure that when your partner's communicating to you, you're not being critical, you're not getting defensive, you're not getting preemptively defensive. And when you're trying to bring something to your partner, that you're softening that startup, that you're not talking from your pedestal, that you're really using your I statements, you're being lovingly curious, you're putting it out there in a way that's really conducive to it being heard.
Yeah, definitely. And again, it's not about winning. This is not about winning. It's not about who's right and who's wrong or who had the better idea. It's not what it's about. It's about what message do you want your partner to receive? How do you want your partner to feel you feel about them? That's the bigger picture here. And, you know, it goes back to episode 6, compromise with me like I'm someone you love.
And I think going back to episode 6, using that compromise, those strategies, again, like, it doesn't mean you have to say, well, here's your influence, here's your suggestion, let me take it with every detail and be subservient. It's, I love that you expressed this to me, you know, and I totally think that'd be great. Let's compromise on how we execute that.
Yes.
Let's see what we have in common.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, if you haven't listened to it, obviously listen to episode 6, but also go back and get the compromise cheat sheet, because that's going to make it way easier. It gives you a process and a step-by-step guide for how to navigate that, which is really important.
Yeah, and getting clear on your negotiables, non-negotiables, you know, just getting to say, hey, what you're bringing forth is valuable to me, but also saying, like, hey, let's both win in this situation in terms of how we execute it or what that looks like in our relationship.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, look, we don't want you to just listen to this. As always, we want you to integrate it into your relationship today. So we've put together a worksheet on breaking down the barriers to accepting influence for you. This is something you're going to do as an individual on your own to help you be a better partner and to help you get better at accepting influence. You can get it on our website at simplygreatrelationships.com/008 download.
Let's talk about takeaways.
Let's talk about them.
What's your big takeaway from today? What resonated with you?
I think for me, as this is something that I've struggled with over time, probably the underlying message that it sends to your partner. Trying to keep the big picture in mind, right? Because in that moment, when you're resisting your partner's influence, it's not because you're being malicious or you don't care or you want to hurt them necessarily. It could just be because something about that communicates an underlying message to you, you know, that you're not important or your information or thoughts aren't valued. So I think to the importance of stepping back out of that moment and saying, okay, what do I want my partner to take away from this? And make a decision about how you're responding and what you're saying based on that answer.
Yeah.
Rather than just your feeling in the moment.
I have to say my takeaway is that same concept of always having your bigger picture really clear in terms of how do you want your partner to feel and how do you want your relationship to feel. And, like, is it ever your intention to make your partner feel rejected, to make them feel unheard, to make them feel devalued? It's never my intention. So are my actions congruent with that? Is what I'm communicating congruent with that? Am I giving my partner the platform to express what they want to express, and am I doing my best to tell them that no matter what they express to me, that it is valuable, and regardless of if I agree with it or not, like, there's a dialogue and a compromise there.
Yeah, definitely super important. So look, that's all for today. We hope that you take these tips and start using them right away. Be sure to download the Breaking Down Barriers to Accepting Influence worksheet so you can do your own work on that. And we'd also love for you to join us in our Facebook group. Continue the conversation. We're going to be giving you tips and tricks and exclusive live streams just for our group members. You can join us at facebook.com/groups/simplygreatrelationships, or you can just go to our website, simplygreatrelationships.com, and click the link there. But definitely join us because there's some good stuff going on.
Definitely. And hit us up with your questions on this topic or any other topics pertaining to relationships, because we're here to help.
We sure are. So we hope you took away a lot today. We will see you next week. Have a good one.
Bye.
Bye.